No country
channelstv.com, and of course, as host broadcaster for the 24th edition of the World Economic Forum Africa meeting, Channels Television will have live updates on whatever it is that is transpiring at the meeting, and so you should make sure that you follow us on any of our social media platforms to get all of this interesting gist coming from the 24th edition of the World Economic Forum Africa meeting. Well, we're still talking about that meeting, and today on the program we're going to be looking at attracting foreign direct investment. Of course, this is what is going to happen now that Nigeria has hosted and is hosting this event. Is going to thoroughly showcase what the country has to offer. And so to talk more about this and other issues as regards the World Economic Forum and of course Nigeria's economy, I'm being joined on the program by the Country Director, International Institute for Investment Promotion, Ogbonna Okuku, and the Chairman, Deloitte Nigeria, Mr. Olufemi Abegunde. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for coming in.
All right, thank you very much.
Well, it's an interesting time for Nigeria. WEFA begins today. It's pretty exciting, and we're all here live in the Federal Capital Territory. The whole world has its eye on us. But let me start with you, Mr. Abegunde.
Yeah.
What are your expectations from this meeting?
Generally, this meeting will give attraction to Nigeria. We have a lot of important dignitaries coming in, economic juggernauts, and people who have had a lot of Nigeria. They've not been in Nigeria before. This has created an opportunity to come and feel. And because you're having a conglomeration of many people, there's going to be an interaction of economic development discussions. You don't have economic development just at a flip like this. It comes from basic things, discussion, strategies, and then people move in after they have confidence. I tell you what, this morning before I came, I spoke to an Indian contingent. They are very excited. They have interest. They have a long list of things that they discuss with me, and I'm sure they're discussing with many other people. And this is the beginning of good things to come for Nigeria.
Mr. Okuku, do you share that sentiment? You see, because he says he discussed with the contingent here in Nigeria, an Indian contingent, and they're very optimistic about bringing their business into Nigeria. We're expecting to see a strong influx of investment from foreign investors, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And you see, it's part of what we've been advocating, that we have to actually reverse the order. We have to bring the roadshow home, investment roadshows. I mean, the time has actually come when what we should do is we organize our investment forums here so that these investors, they've been hearing about the figures. They actually have to feel the people, because they need to know the culture of the people they're going to be dealing with. And then we actually, on our own, we have to also put pressure on us to make sure that we become more investor ready. Because it's not just about having investors come around, we have to also be investor ready so that we will know exactly what the investors want to see, what they want to hear, and then we hand over to them what they need.
Now, as a country director for the International Institute for Investment Promotion, you definitely know what these investors want to see. Yeah. Looking at the sectors that we've begun to see, being showcased more often, are these sectors, the kind of sectors, are they viable enough for this foreign investment to come into?
Yeah, definitely. The sectors are very viable, but like I always say, we need to do more. Okay, in the sense that investors, they look at figures. They actually consider figures. They actually consider how competitive the environment is. They actually consider also the undue influence by government. So if we are talking about having investors be able to come and play in our country, they also have to consider things like your tax regime, the incentives that you're going to give to them. So a lot of things come into play, which the investors are looking at. So if we're looking at things like the solid mineral sector, which we have not done so much on, because since the investors want to see figures, you have to actually go beyond sitting to say, I have tantalite or I have gold. The investor wants to know, I have this quantity of gold, so that he will know exactly how much he's going to put in, and then he will have an exit plan to know when he's leaving how much he's going to go out with. So we have to actually work harder to be able to give them these figures. In the agri sector, we've been talking about the agri value chain and all of that. So figures must be added. We must add figures to those the value chains, so that investors, because you see, I say this all the time, that investors are investments are like like water. It moves to areas of less resistance. So if it comes to an area and then there's so much, bureaucracy, there's so much to stop its flow, it will now start looking elsewhere. So that's how investors are and investments are.
He talks about numbers.
Yes.
Nigeria has just done a rebased of its GDP.
Yes.
Right now we're about $510 billion.
510.
Many investors actually see Nigeria as representing the continent's largest business opportunity, which he also highlighted.
Yes.
But then, how diverse are these opportunities?
They are indeed diverse. They're still diverse. That GDP, Nigeria is gradually bouncing back as the giant of Africa that we used to say we were. If we harness the opportunities this presents us, we will get there. It might take a little bit of time. The basically GDP tells you, what capacity you have, what product capacity do you have. Some people have asked me, we are consultants and people in the street say, what does all this noise mean? It means that in simple language, if you permit me to just say, it tells you if you wake up in the morning, you go on the weighing scale. How much do I weigh? Am I a heavyweight or a lightweight? Nigeria is a heavyweight. And when you are heavyweight, what are the opposite of heavyweight? That means you can trade a solid punch. Now, if you don't train yourself, put yourself in a fit position, you will not be able to put through that punch. I am a heavyweight by weight, by class, but I can't meet Muhammad Ali in the ring. I'll run. Now, so that's what he's saying. Put your house in order. We need to put our house in order. We need to have infrastructure. We need to pay attention to infrastructure. We need to pay attention to power. If an investor comes in the country, they will need power.
What about policies?
Yeah, wait. You see, as a consultant, the policies on ground are still good enough. We can improve on some things. We have NIPC. If you go to NIPC Act, which is Nigerian Investment Promotion, they have a lot of incentives there. There is a lot of tax breaks and some things that are there.
Yeah, which you also talked
Yes,
about.
which we already have. In many countries, you don't have that. So we already have some incentives on the ground. What we need is the enabling environment. In my other priority, the enabling environment itself in terms of the infrastructure. Because if an investor is looking at putting in an assembly plant, a car assembly plant, the whole of West Africa, I don't think we have a viable one. They need power to get this done. They need some other things to get this done. Do we have it?
Okay. Now you know that of course the power sector has been privatized, but most of those people who actually bought this unbundled asset actually say it's going to take, if it's too quick,
Yes.
3 to 5 years before we begin to see any real development happening in that sector. So then we are looking to attract investors,
Yes.
particularly in the sectors that we see or we hope will begin to create more jobs, manufacturing, for instance, agriculture,
Yes.
the services industry.
Yes.
We're expecting to see a heavy influx of investment into the sectors, and they know that there's a challenge of power.
Yes.
Who, in the short term, can the private sector do anything or help?
Okay, let's since we started doing some good illustrations, let me use another illustration that we use generally when we're teaching investment promotion. See, investment promotion is like, when you're trying to consummate a marriage. Now, Nigeria is like a bride.
Yes.
Yes, of course, the girl's father is very rich, but the girl probably she's blind.
Okay.
So the father goes, okay, anybody that marries my daughter, I'll give you this and this and this. Now, because my daughter is blind. Now, what am I trying to say? In the interim, we have to actually increase our incentive policy so that these investors will actually see, if I'm not getting power, how much am I going to lose? These are simple calculations. If I'm going to expend another 35% of my project costs on power, or my running cost on power, so can't government also give me an incentive that I can actually use to cover for that particular loss that is going to happen when I don't have power?
This power we're talking about is in whether electric power or solar power, whichever kind of
whatever
power it is. Okay.
And then 2, we also need to encourage having clusters, so that shared infrastructure, then you can actually have people, smaller companies that can actually, the ones that have not been able to buy the discos and all of that, discos or rather, who can actually provide power to those clusters.
Yes.
So that this shared infrastructure will actually help reduce cost of doing business.